Texas recently took up constitutional carry in its legislature. John Lott Jr. testified in front of the legislature. John Lott Jr. runs the Crime Research Prevention Center, found at crimeresearch.org. He is a leading expert in firearm uses. He gave testimony and answered all their questions. And I think it's important for everyone to watch his testimony because it will give you ammunition to use against the antis and plus strengthen your own resolve and your beliefs. Now, without further ado, here's Dr. Lott.
And please state your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
Sure. My name is John Lott. I'm president of the Crime Prevention Research Center, and I'm just here as an expert to talk about the various issues involving the bills.
He's on the bill. You're on the bill, and you're showing as neutral?
Right.
Okay. Yes, we have it that way. Thank you.
Okay. So I want to thank all the committee members here, and I want to thank in particular Representative Mike Schaefer for inviting me to come and talk here. Texas could be the 19th state to adopt so-called constitutional carry that would allow adults who legally own a gun to carry without a permit. In the last few weeks, there have been a number of other states. Indiana and Iowa state houses have passed constitutional carry bills. Tennessee's state senate also did so, all by 2-to-1 margins. Just as a comparison, there are 33 states right now that allow open carry without a license. If you include Iowa, which allows it outside of cities without a license, you have 34. Gun control advocates regularly make dire predictions about what will happen if Texas adopts this law. I guess what I would just point out is if you go back and look, you'll see the types of predictions that were made for this law are exactly the same as the predictions that were made for right to carry laws when they were passed in 1995 here in the state. Since then, we've had a total of 43 states that have right to carry laws. One thing that's interesting is if you go back and look, you will not find one of these states that have adopted a right to carry law that has rescinded or reversed the law in any way. And none of those right to carry states have even held a hearing to go and reverse the right to carry law. And you see a similar type of pattern with regard to constitutional carry. What might be a debate that occurs in legislators when it gets passed quickly becomes a non-issue. None of the states that have passed constitutional carry have even held a single hearing to try to go and reverse the laws that they've passed on that. Constitutional carry in Texas is going to make two major changes in the bill in the way people are right now. One, it will allow people to start carrying quickly if they run into some type of emergency, if dangers arise quickly. And also it will lower the cost of people being able to go and carry. Let me just talk for a minute about the costs of permits. The main factor that determines the number of people who are able to go and carry is the cost of getting permits. And let me give you a simple example. There's more sophisticated work on this, but if you were to compare Illinois with Indiana, in Indiana, 20.3% of the adult population has a concealed carry permit. In Illinois, it's 3.3%. It's very easy to go and explain the difference between the two. In Illinois, it costs $450 to go and get a concealed carry permit. In Indiana, it costs $12.95. Not only does it explain the change in the percentage of the adults that has it, it also explains the type of people who go and get permits. In Illinois, the type of people who get permits are basically wealthy white males who live in the suburbs. In Indiana, you much higher percentage of minorities, particularly blacks, who have concealed carry permits. Blacks have a higher share of concealed carry permits in Indiana than their share of the population in the state there. And why is that important? If my research convinces me of anything, it's the people who are most likely victims of violent crime who benefit the most from having the option to be able to go and protect themselves. And so even if you had the same percentage of people having permits in Illinois and Indiana, the fact that you're more likely to have people who are victims of violent crime being able to go and carry means you're going to have a greater reduction in crime in Indiana than you're going to be seeing in Illinois. The other big change is how quickly people are going to be able to go and get a permit. After you've done, in Texas, after you've done the fingerprinting and met the other requirements to go and get a permit, the Texas Department of Public Safety tries to go and issue concealed carry permits within 60 days. If a woman's being stalked or threatened, 60 days is a pretty long time to go and make her have to wait before she's going to be able to go and get a permit to be able to go and legally defend herself.
Dr. Lott, thank you very. No, I'm not telling you. I'm not telling you to leave. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Sure.
I've read plenty of your, especially your quantitative research in this policy space. Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
In any of your quantitative research, and you can pass some along to us at another time, do you see any significant causation, correlation between more of these unlicensed, possessing of firearms, handguns, correlating to increased crime, increased suicides, or any other social maladies?
No, in fact, that was the next issue I was just going to get to in the thing. I mean, there are lots of comparisons you can make. You can do more sophisticated analysis. But if you just take the 5 years before they pass constitutional carry and the 5 years after, you actually see a few percentage point drop in violent crimes, about a 4% drop in murders, and about a 4% drop in rape rates that occur. And there's no statistically significant evidence with regard to either suicides or accidental shootings.
Okay. So, because these are some of the data points I see.
Right.
I'm sent data points people send me. They say, well, Indiana, I believe one famous one is Indiana. In the mid to just a few years ago, a couple of years ago, maybe a few years ago, started their constitutional carry or unlicensed.
But Indiana hasn't started. They're voting on it right now.
Okay.
The Indiana House has passed the bill, but it's before the Senate right now.
Okay. Well, some Midwestern state passed.
Well, they're right. I mean, you have pretty much the whole northern part of the Northeast. You have Kentucky in the center of the country. You have Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and then you have many western states from Arizona all the way up through Idaho and Montana and North and South Dakota. So you have pretty much a good cross-section across different types of states in the country.
Okay. And again, there's no statistical significance of any of these correlations of suicides, murders. What about mass shootings?
Yeah, and I haven't seen anything with that. Look, the big thing to me with regard to mass public shootings is that you have to take into account that 94% of these attacks occur where guns are banned. I mean, anybody who reads the diaries or looks at the statements from these people may be crazy in some sense, but they're not stupid. They want to go to a place where they can go and kill as many people as possible. And if they go to a place where they know victims can't defend themselves, they're going to be able to go and kill more people than they're going to be able to go and get more attention than they could have otherwise gotten. If you have one police officer in an area guarding what otherwise is a gun-free zone, they have an almost impossible job. If you have an attacker there, and there's one officer in uniform who they can identify as being the only person with a gun, who's the first person that they're going to try to take out before they go after the other people that are there? It's going to be the officer. If you actually allow people to be able to go and carry concealed in those areas, it actually makes the job of the officer safer, because those people, when they go and do the attack, realize that they're revealing their position, and they have to worry that there's somebody behind them or to the side that they don't know, who may be able to go and stop them at that point. But I can give you case after case where these people have consciously, these people plan these attacks for 6 months to 2.5 years prior to the attack. The Sandy Hook killer was planning his attack 2.5 years prior to the attack that he did. And these guys, like the Aurora Batman movie theater shooter, he would go and actually stake out the different movie theaters and go and visit them beforehand. He visited other targets. And his thing, he would try to talk, is there somebody there with a gun who's going to be able to stop him? You look at something like the Batman movie theater shooter. There were 7 movie theaters that were showing the premiere of the Batman movie within a 20-minute drive of his apartment. Only one place banned permitted concealed handguns. That's the one he went to. You look at like the mall shootings in like Omaha, Nebraska, or in Salt Lake City, or in Portland, Oregon. Again, you look at these places, you may have 8 malls in Omaha, Nebraska that were indoor malls. Only one of those had signs posted banning permitted concealed handguns. That's the one the attacker went to. At some point, even if you didn't have these statements from these killers, you'd have to realize that this just isn't random, what these guys go and pick out as their targets. These guys, you have people who overwhelmingly have no political ideology, but want to commit suicide. At some point along the line, these people realized that they could get a lot of media attention when they committed suicide if they took other people with them. So the way you try to eliminate their incentive for doing that is taking away their goal, which is to go and kill as many people as possible. And the faster somebody can be there in order to try to stop them, and in a way that, convinces them beforehand that they're going to run into trouble, you'll be able to deter that and take away their bizarre gain that they have to go and get the media attention that they have.
Okay.
Sorry if I went on for too long on that.
No, thank you. I just wanted to. Thank you. I just wanted to get that commentary. Before I turn you over to see if some other members have some questions for you, your scholar. What's really the dynamic with the license, or not having a license, being a lawful Texan, a lawful American that can possess? I can go to a retail store. If I'm not licensed, I am licensed. But if you can go to a retail store tomorrow morning. You can purchase a handgun here in Texas, unlicensed. You can walk out of the store unlicensed, get in your truck unlicensed, ride around town unlicensed, go home, and do that all over again, except you can't get out of your truck after you've bought it and you've possessed. Nothing's happened to my status as a lawful, person. What's your take on that, on that dynamic there in the license?
Well, first of all, let me say we've collected data by state on the number of concealed carry permits for like 8 years now. And what you find is that when a state moves to constitutional carry, there's really little change in the number of licenses that are there. There's been a big growth overall in the number of licenses, but the states that adopt it pretty much just kind of flatten out there. There's other reasons, either because they want to go and be able to go and buy a gun without having to wait for a background check, or whether they may travel to other states or whatever, or just because they feel better getting a license. I have no idea, but if you look at it, it stays very flat. What you do see, though, when you move to constitutional carry, you do see more people carrying, and you see a change in the type of people who carry. More poor people, I believe, carry in those cases. When Texas went from $140 to $40 in terms of the fees, or reduced the training requirements, prior to that, it had kind of leveled off at about 500,000 people having concealed carry permits. At that point, you kind of saw an explosion in the number of people who get permits. And you can go and you can see the zip codes for where people have it. It was much more heavily suburbs where people had concealed carry permits beforehand. And I think if you move to constitutional carry, you're going to see even more of a move to that. I would argue the very people who need it the most, the ones who are most likely victims of violent crime, are going to find it more affordable to be able to go and protect themselves and their families than you would have been able to do otherwise. And the other thing is just you have people that have dangers that arise from time to time, and they need to move quickly. You know, if a woman, her ex, all of a sudden starts to stalk her, you know, she may want to start to carry and not go, the process would take a long time to get approval. So I think it's not so much a change in the number of people who get it, but you'll see a change in the composition, and you'll see other people who need it on temporary basis to be able to do it.
And in many of these communities that you're talking about, where lowering the barriers to entry, so to speak, they're able to start exercising their constitutional rights. You know, these are very virtuous people. Vast majority, almost unanimous numbers of them are very virtuous people.
Yeah.
Okay, and they deserve access to their constitutional rights just like everybody else.
They're no different than other people in terms of wanting to protect their loved ones and themselves. They may even have more of a reason because they tend to live in more dangerous areas than other people do.
Okay. Members, any questions for this scholar here? Yes, Mr. Tenderholt.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. I want to, I think, dispel rumors, but I'm guessing that you've probably got this data. I'm not talking raw numbers, I'm talking percentage. Is there an increase in accidents when the states do this, or is there an increase or decrease in crime? Both of those.
Right.
Because a lot of people try to say the opposite. They try to say there's more accidents. Well, is there a percentage increase in accidents, which I wouldn't believe? And is there an increase or decrease in crime when these are passed across the states, or does it stay about the same?
There's slight drops in crime. You know, we're talking about single-digit drops, and I have not seen any evidence that there's a change in either accidental deaths or suicides.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Schaefer.
Thank you, Dr. Lott. Can you talk about the experience the United States has relative to violent crime with guns and other countries? We hear a lot of comparisons. There's something unique about the United States and the amount of gun violence we experience. Could you give us any of our neighbors, Mexico or Canada or the like?
Well, I'll make two general points. I recently had two peer-reviewed articles that were published that looked at, for example, mass public shootings across the world, and then I'll talk about murders and stuff. And, because the claim is that the United States is somehow unique in terms of mass public shootings. The United States makes about 4.6% of the world population. We make up a little bit less than 1% of the mass public shooters in the world. It just doesn't get news attention, things that happen in other countries. France, for example, in 2015 had more casualties in 1 year from mass public shootings than the United States had during the entire 8 years of the Obama presidency that was there. Now, with regard to gun ownership and murder rates, there's one really simple way that I talk to people about this, and that is, there are places that have tried to ban either all guns or all handguns. If guns on net are bad, you would think that that would be an easy way to go and reduce murders and homicides in a country. And yet you cannot find one single place in the world that's banned either all guns or all handguns and seen murder rates go down or even stay the same. Every single time, because, there are lots of comparisons you can make across places, cultural differences or other things that may be different, law enforcement, other things that are different. But if you take any jurisdiction, in the United States, we're familiar with Chicago and Washington, D.C., and the bans that happened there and the increases that happened. Gun control advocates will normally say, well, that wasn't a fair test, because unless you ban guns every place within a country, people could still get guns from Illinois or Indiana or from Maryland or Virginia. And so you need to be able to ban guns every place. That doesn't really explain why the murder rates went up in those places after the bans went there. It may have explained why it to go down like they were promising. But you can even look at island nations, which don't have any neighbor that they can readily blame too much for importation of guns. You have readily defined, easily defendable borders. And yet, even in island nations, there's not one case where you've seen a ban where murder rates have either stayed the same or gone down. In every case, they've gone up, often by threefold, even 7 or 8-fold after bans have gone into place. If you look across countries and you look at the gun ownership, most countries license guns for people, and so it's relatively easy to go and get the percentage of the adult population in different countries that own guns. We've just finished a study that we spent about $70,000 going and hiring translators to go and around and look at the numbers for different countries. But what you find is, in fact, a fairly strong relationship between the countries with higher percentage gun ownership rates actually tend to have lower murder and homicide rates.
I understand that Mexico has some very strict gun regulations. What's the murder and mass shootings like in Mexico?
Sure. Since 1973, I've actually testified before the Mexican Senate and House Federal Constitution Committees about this stuff. Since 1973, Mexico has only had one gun store in the country. It's located in Mexico City. It's run by the military. The guns are very expensive there. And you can go and get a license. It's a 2-year license. It costs you about $2,000 to go and buy the license that's there. The most recent numbers for 2017 and 2018 indicate that in each year there are about 3,000 licenses that were issued. 3,000, when you're talking about a country with about 87 million adults in it. And yet Mexico has a murder rate in recent years that's like 6 times higher than the murder rate that we have here in the United States. When I was testifying there, I talked to federal senators, and they would tell me that they get death threats all the time, but they can't even get a license themselves to be able to go and carry a gun. They have a hard time even getting a license to be able to even own a gun that's there. And they are getting weapons from around the world. The drug gangs that bring in the drugs bring in the weapons that they need to go and be able to protect that extremely valuable property that they have there. And the people that have the weapons are the criminals, not the people who are the citizens who are trying to protect themselves and their property and their loved ones.
Members, any other questions for Dr. Lott? And again, I'm looking at this screen here. You are testifying tonight as neutral. You're not here to sell or promote any piece of legislation or anything.
That's correct.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.